My name is Naomi Clark, 32 years old. If you'd asked my mother to describe me, she'd probably say something like, Naomi? She's the responsible one. And she'd mean it as a compliment, like it was a badge of honor I should be proud to wear. What she'd leave out is that in our family, responsible was just another word for expendable. The one you lean on, the one you drain, the one you expect to fix things without ever asking if she's okay. I've been financially independent since I was 18. My first job, my first apartment, my first bare fridge that I filled one cheap grocery trip at a time. While my brother Jake bounced between trying something new and taking some time to figure things out, and my sister Kelly cycled through jobs and phases, I was the one with a steady paycheck, the one who quietly stepped in to keep the lights on when my mother forgot to pay a bill. Over the years, the list grew. Jake's rent when he came up short, Marcus's school tuition, because my nephew deserved better. Mom's emergencies, which somehow always looked like new cookware or concert tickets. Kelly's borrowed your card, only for groceries messages. No one ever called it using. They called it helping family. And I believe that for longer than I'd like to admit. The night before everything blew up, I got the usual text from Kelly at 8:52 p.m. Borrowed your card only for groceries. No apology. No, do you mind? Just that casual, breezy entitlement she wore like perfume. I stared at the message in my car outside my building, exhausted from a day of putting out client fires, skipped lunch, splitting headache pressing behind my eyes. My fridge was empty. I hadn't had real groceries in over a week. I didn't reply, not because I agreed, but because I was too tired to fight. I showered, fell into bed, and was asleep within minutes. The irony hit me the next morning. At around 7 a.m., I plugged my phone in on the kitchen counter, poured coffee into my chipped mug, and, out of habit, opened my banking app just to glance at my balance before work. The number blinked up at me. 391. For a second, I thought I'd misread it. I blinked, refreshed the screen. Same number. Before that, yesterday, it had been just over $9,000 in that checking account. Money I'd carefully kept there because it was the account everything flowed through. Jake's rent transfers, Marcus's school payments, Mom's just this once requests. It was never extra. It was designated, already mentally spent on everyone but me. My stomach dropped, not because of the amount, but because of how fast it had vanished. My thumb moved, scrolling through the overnight activity. The list read like a bad joke. Friday, 10:37 p.m. $1,120. Bottle service at a downtown club. 11:55 p.m. $780. Online luxury boutique. 12:14 a.m. $2,400. Louis Vuitton. 12:49 a.m. $326. Fashion Nova. 1:03 a.m. $650. Some sketchy off-brand site I'd never heard of. 2:06 a.m. $450. Cash App to Thai Bangers. 2:46 a.m. $300. Wire transfer. 3:22 a.m. $118. Uber Black. 10:11 a.m. $248. Brunch spot from Kelly's Instagram story, complete with 30% tip. There she'd been, just a few hours earlier, clinking champagne glasses with her friends at some trendy brunch place. Fresh nails, new designer sunglasses, avocado toast, and bottomless mimosas. Hatch blessed. Hash self-care. Paid for with my card. The same card she'd borrowed for groceries. I stared at the charges, feeling something inside me go numb. Then slowly it shifted, numbness giving way to a quiet, steady burn. I grabbed my keys. Mom's house was 20 minutes away, close enough that I'd memorized the drive years ago. The morning talk show was already on when I walked in, host laughing too loudly about some celebrity scandal. Mom sat on the couch in her faded robe, sipping coffee like it was any other day. Hey, baby, she said without looking up. You're here early. I needed to show you something, I said. I sat down across from her, opened my banking app again, and held out my phone. Kelly cleaned me out last night, I said. $8,700. Gone. Mom squinted at the screen, then waved a hand dismissively. She needs help, Naomi. Don't be cruel. That broke me. Not the money, not the transactions. The shrug. The shrug that said my sister's greed was a minor inconvenience. The shrug that said my exhaustion was an overreaction. The shrug that told me, without words, you exist to absorb this. Why are you making it a big deal? She stole from me, I said quietly. That wasn't help. That was theft. Mom sighed heavily, like I was the one being unreasonable. You make good money. You always land on your feet. Your sister's had it harder. She doesn't have your strength. I stared at her. I worked for what I have. Nobody handed it to me. And we're grateful, she said automatically. Funny. I couldn't remember a single time anyone had actually said thank you. I nodded once, my face neutral. Okay. I stood up. Where are you going? She asked, annoyed that the scene wasn't playing out the way she'd expected. I have to get to work, I lied. I didn't go to work. I went home. I set my keys on the counter, sat at my small dining table, and opened my laptop. This time, when I logged into my accounts, I wasn't checking. I was moving. Checking to savings. Savings to a separate high-yield account with two-factor authentication and no linked transfers. Emergency fund into an investment account with a lockup period. Auto payments, off. Standing transfers to Jake's rent, canceled. Monthly tuition payment for Marcus. Paused with a note to myself to decide later what my boundaries would be, not theirs. I opened the lease portal for Jake's apartment and removed myself as authorized guarantor. My credit wasn't going to be sacrificed on the altar of his irresponsibility anymore. Every click felt surreal. Not triumphant, not vindictive, just final. By 2:14 a.m., after double and triple checking that every major account was secure, I made one last transfer, $11,000, into an investment account only I had access to. No shared logins, no saved passwords on family devices, no more open doors. It wasn't revenge. It was a firewall. I closed my laptop and sat back, staring at the dark window. My reflection looked different, more tired, yes, but also sharper. Like I'd just stepped out of a role I hadn't realized I was playing. For years, they had treated my income like a community resource. That night, I quietly decided it belonged to me again. The next morning, at 6:02 a.m., my phone lit up with missed calls. Jake, Mom, Kelly. I didn't answer. But from my bedroom window, I could hear it faintly from down the block. Jake's scream tore through the early morning air so loud the old woman across the street stepped outside in her robe, clutching her coffee, looking toward his apartment. I took a sip of my own coffee. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt nothing. And for me, that was the clearest sign I was finally done. The first thing that hit wasn't his scream. It was the notifications. At 6:03 a.m., my phone lit up like it was trying to escape my nightstand. Jake, 3 missed calls. Mom, 2 missed calls. Kelly, 4 missed calls back to back. I let them all roll to voicemail. I sat at my small kitchen table, phone face down, fingers wrapped around the same cup of coffee I'd poured an hour earlier. It had gone lukewarm, but I didn't care. I wasn't angry anymore. Whatever rage I'd felt when I saw the $8,700 vanish had burned itself out in the hours I spent locking everything down. What was left wasn't fire. It was cold, steady, almost dull. Peace, I realized, doesn't always feel warm. Sometimes it feels like finally not caring. At 8:44 a.m., the first text slipped through. From Jake. What the hell did you do? Rent didn't go through. Marcus's school's calling. You better fix this now. No, hi. No, are you okay? Just entitlement, like always. Like he'd forgotten every month I covered his rent quietly. No lectures, no reminders. Like Marcus's tuition didn't come out of the savings I built with 60, 70-hour work weeks while he played cool dad, who didn't believe in 9-to-5s. Like he wasn't living in an apartment I'd co-signed because his credit history read like a cautionary tale. I didn't answer. At 9:12, my front door shook under his fist. He pounded like the building was on fire. Naomi, open up! I walked to the door, took a breath, and opened it slowly. Jake shoved his phone in my face before I could speak. The screen glowed with his banking app. Balance, 3 alien. His eyes were wild. What did you do? I looked at the screen, then at him. I moved my money. That was my money, he shouted. No, I said calmly. That was my money. You just got used to having access to it. His face flushed. Rent was due yesterday. Marcus's school keeps calling. They're talking about dropping him from classes. You blindsided us. What point are you trying to prove? I'm not trying to prove anything, I said. I'm done funding adults who refuse to act like adults. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. So you're okay with Marcus suffering because you're on some power trip? The mention of Marcus stung, but not the way he thought it would. This isn't about Marcus, I said quietly. You made your choices. You were fine with him depending on money that wasn't yours. You were fine letting your son's stability hang on me without ever asking if I was okay. Jake scoffed. Oh, give me a break. You make plenty. You'll be fine. That's the problem, I said. You assume I'll always be fine, so you don't have to be. He shook his head, jaw clenching. You're acting like you're better than us. I'm acting like I'm separate from you, I corrected. There's a difference. You could have talked to us first, he shot back. We're family. And when did you talk to me first? I asked. When Kelly took my card and drained almost $9,000 in 6 hours? When Mom told you I'd cover your rent? When Marcus's school called me directly because you gave them my number? Silence. You don't like what I did, I said. That doesn't make it wrong. He opened his mouth, closed it, then settled on. You're screwing all of us just to send a message. I'm not sending a message, I said. I'm ending a pattern. I stepped back, hand on the door. He stared at me, furious, confused, scared. But I didn't fold. I'm not your safety net anymore, Jake. Then I closed the door. That afternoon, Mom moved from calls to strategy. First, a long, dramatic voicemail about how we've always been there for each other, how we don't air dirty laundry, how money comes and goes, but family is forever. Then a group text. Family meeting, tonight, 7 p.m. at my house. No yelling, just talking. We need to fix this. She added the little praying hands emoji like a bandage slapped over a bullet wound. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Every part of me wanted to ignore it, to let them spin in their own storm without me, to stay in my quiet condo, make dinner, and pretend I didn't see it. But another part, smaller but persistent, whispered that maybe I needed to hear the whole script one last time. Not for them. For me. For closure. At 7:20, I pulled up in front of Mom's house. Jake's car was already there, Kelly's too. I sat in mine for a second, watching the shapes move through the curtains. The TV glow flickered. Shadows passed. I took a breath, got out, and walked up to the front door. The moment I stepped inside, the air hit me. Thick, charged, like walking into a storm cloud right before it breaks. Kelly paced in front of the TV, phone in hand, like she was one notification away from exploding. Jake sat in the recliner, arms crossed, jaw tight. Mom was in the kitchen, banging dishes around, mid-rant even without anyone responding. She didn't say hello. You embarrassed us, she snapped as soon as she saw me. You made a scene in front of everyone. Jake's landlord called. Marcus's school called. Kelly's card got declined at brunch. Do you realize what you've done? Embarrassed. Not harmed, not betrayed, embarrassed. I sat down on the couch without saying a word. Mom wiped her hands on a towel, stormed into the living room. You've made things worse for everyone. Jake can't pay rent. Marcus's future is on the line. Kelly's drowning in debt. And I had to cancel my doctor's appointment because you locked the emergency fund. I tilted my head. The emergency fund I built for you? She hesitated. It's for all of us. It was for medical emergencies, I said. You never used it for that. You used it for plane tickets and cookware. That's not the point, she snapped. The point is, you overreacted. You didn't think about the consequences. You mean, I said slowly, I didn't think about the consequences for you. Kelly stopped pacing and turned, her eyes already glassy with anger. You humiliated me, she said. My card got declined in front of my friends. Ty had to cover my Uber. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I looked at her. Who's Ty? She blinked. Just a friend. I nodded once. Maybe he can help you next time you need 8-7. Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. I was going to pay it back. How? I asked. With what money? The job you quit or the one you haven't found yet? You're cruel, she spat. You think you're better than us because you have a little money. This isn't about money, I said. It's about respect. Jake jumped in. You're acting like a dictator. This family relies on you. You don't get to just stop without talking to us. I laughed once, humorless. When did you talk to me? When Kelly grabbed my card at 9 p.m. and drained it by 3 a.m., where was the conversation? When Marcus's school called to say tuition was overdue, where was the conversation? When Mom started treating my paycheck like a subscription, who sat down and asked if that was okay? They had no answer. Mom's voice dropped, trying a softer angle. This isn't like you, Naomi. You've changed. You're being cold. I looked at her. Maybe I have changed. Maybe I got tired of being used. I felt something in the room shift, as if they were only just starting to realize this wasn't one of our usual fights, that this version of me wouldn't be soothed, guilted, or browbeaten back into place. And that's when the front door opened. No knock, no warning. just the slow, distinct shuffle of worn shoes on the hardwood and the tap of a cane that had its own rhythm. "Grandpa." Jake sat up straighter. Kelly's mouth snapped shut. Mom went pale. He hadn't set foot in Mom's house in almost a year. He said he didn't like the energy, which we all knew was his polite way of saying he was tired of watching the freeloading and excuses. Tonight he walked in like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He didn't ask if he could come in. He didn't ask what was going on. He went straight to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, pulled out his old mug, the chipped one with the faded fishing logo, poured himself some tea from the kettle like he used to, then sat down at the head of the dining table like it was his house. Because once it was. Then he looked at me. "I heard what happened," he said simply. I nodded once, that was all. He didn't need the play-by-play. He turned his gaze to the others. Slow, unblinking. A man who'd seen enough people lie to his face to recognize it before they even opened their mouths. "So let me get this straight," he said, motioning toward the three of them. "You let this girl cover your rent, pay your bills, fund your lifestyle, and the second she decides she's done being used, you call a meeting?" Jake started to speak. "Grandpa, it's not like that." "You sold your power tools to pay for beer," Grandpa cut in without raising his voice. "Don't talk. You're 33 and your son is more responsible than you are." Jake sank back down, cheeks burning. Kelly huffed. "He's being dramatic. It was just—" "I saw the brunch pictures," Grandpa said, turning to her. "The hotel, the bags. The same girl who told me she was broke was out drinking $20 mimosas with people who don't even know her last name. Don't insult me." For once, Kelly went quiet. Then he turned to Mom, his daughter. "And you," he said. "You knew exactly what was happening. You watched Naomi wear herself out for this family while you called it love. But it wasn't love. It was manipulation. You're the reason these two think they're entitled to her money. You raised them to believe Naomi owes them something." Mom's lips trembled. "Dad, that's not fair." He held up a hand. "Stop. I don't want to hear it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn, sealed envelope, then dropped it on the table with a dull thud. "That's my will," he said. "Signed, notarized, legal." Nobody moved. "Everything I have," he continued, "the land in Ohio, the house, the retirement savings, the car, all of it goes to Naomi." Jake's mouth fell open. Kelly let out a disbelieving laugh. "You're kidding, right?" she scoffed. "She doesn't even need it. She already has money." Grandpa didn't blink. "And that's exactly why she deserves it. She never asked." He gripped the edge of the table and pushed himself up, his eyes still sharp. "You want to know when I made that decision?" he asked. "It wasn't last week. It was 2 years ago, when I needed a ride to the hospital and my blood pressure was through the roof." He looked at each of them in turn. "I called Jake," he said. "He said he was busy. I called Kelly. She didn't answer. Naomi drove 60 miles in traffic and sat with me for 6 hours while they ran tests, and she never told a soul." The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. "You all forgot something," Grandpa said. "Family isn't about money. It's about who shows up. Naomi showed up every damn time, and you turned her into your personal ATM." Then he turned to me again, and his voice softened. "You don't owe them anything, Naomi," he said. "You never did. You've been carrying this family long enough. If they're angry now, let them be angry. Let them find out what it feels like to stand on their own 2 feet." He shuffled toward the door, then paused and looked back one last time. "And one more thing," he added. "If any of you come after her again, if I so much as hear you asking her for a cent, you're out of my life permanently. No inheritance, no calls, no visits. Done." Then he was gone. The door shut behind him. No one moved. I didn't touch the envelope. I didn't need to. I hadn't come for money. I came for clarity. And I got it. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked to the door. "You're really going to let this family split over money?" Mom asked, voice shaking. I looked back at her. "It was never just about money," I said quietly. "You made it about control, expectations, and guilt. All I did was stop playing alone." Then I left. No shouting, no door slam, just a quiet exit from a role I'd been forced into my whole life. For the first time, they weren't in control of the room. And for the first time, I wasn't in it. The days that followed felt strangely hollow, not peaceful, not triumphant, not sad, just quiet in that heavy, waiting way, like the air before a storm decides whether to break. No one called me. No one texted. No vague Instagram stories, no angry paragraphs from Mom, no guilt-drenched pleas from Jake, no dramatic subtweet-style quotes from Kelly. The silence wasn't absence. It was strategy. They were waiting me out, convinced, as always, that time would soften me, Guilt would pull me back, and I'd eventually rescue them the way I always had. But something was different now. Me. On Thursday, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. Then it rang again. And again. On the fourth call, I answered. I expected Mom. I expected Jake. I expected Kelly in full meltdown mode. I did not expect Marcus. His voice came through small, unsure, the way teenagers sound when they're afraid they might be the problem. Naomi? I sat up straighter. Hey, kiddo. You okay? A shaky breath. Are you mad at me? My throat tightened. Of course not. Why would you think that? I don't know, he said quietly. Dad keeps yelling. Grandma keeps crying. Aunt Kelly threw a plate. A pause. Everyone's saying it's your fault. I closed my eyes. Marcus, none of that is true. None of this is your fault. Another pause, then, I don't want to end up like him. That sentence hit harder than anything my family had thrown at me. Like your dad? I asked softly. Yeah, he whispered. He's always stressed, always mad, always behind on everything. He blames everyone else, and I don't want to be like that. How did you avoid it? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. How do you explain to a 16-year-old that what saved you was seeing the trap early enough to run before it swallowed you whole? That you survived because no one gave you help, so you had to learn independence before resentment turned into paralysis? That you didn't become like them because you didn't have the luxury of failing the way they did? I swallowed. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? I want to give you a real answer. Okay, he said. Please don't block us. I need you. When the call ended, I sat still for a long time, letting the weight of his words settle into my chest. Marcus wasn't the problem. He was the collateral damage. The one person in that house watching, absorbing, learning. And now he was asking me how to break a cycle I barely escaped myself. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, just after sunrise, 3 soft knocks came at my door. Gentle, rhythmic, familiar. I opened it. Grandpa stood there, wearing the same brown jacket he always wore to the hardware store, holding a paper bag in one hand and a beat-up manila folder in the other. Morning, he said simply, stepping inside before I could answer. He moved through my apartment like it was still his workshop. Slow, intentional, occupying space without asking permission. He set the paper bag on the table, pulled out 2 foil-wrapped sandwiches and 2 glass bottles of root beer, then placed the worn folder right in front of me. No small talk, no apology for showing up unannounced, just purpose. You haven't eaten, he said, handing me a sandwich. He wasn't wrong. I unwrapped it quietly while he opened the folder. Inside were neatly stacked documents. Deeds, bank statements, insurance papers, the will he'd shown the family, plus copies. He slid them toward me. It's time to finish this, he said. I didn't touch them yet. Grandpa, you already did enough. I'm not asking for anything. I know, he replied, sipping his root beer. That's why I'm giving it to you. We sat there in silence for a moment, the kitchen clock ticking in the background. They're falling apart already, he said finally. No surprise there. He tapped the table with one finger. Jake's trying to get a loan from that cousin in Denver. Kelly's trying to sell off that fake business she started in February to cover Ty's gambling debt. Your mother called me 12 times yesterday. First she cried, then she begged, then she threatened to take me to court for emotional distress. I snorted. She can't be serious. She is, he said dryly. And she's wrong, but she's desperate. They've lost their access to you, and they don't know who to be without it. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I should have stopped this sooner, he said. I kept thinking if I helped them long enough, they'd grow up. Turns out all I did was keep them from growing at all. He reached into the folder again and pulled out something unexpected. An old photo. It took me a moment to recognize it. A 12-year-old me, holding a dirt-covered shovel on the farm, smiling too wide for the camera, face streaked with sweat and determination. The fence project, I whispered. He nodded. You worked sunrise to sunset for a week, never complained, never asked for money, just asked what needed doing next. He looked at me with something that wasn't quite pride and wasn't quite sorrow, just truth. That's when I knew, he said. Knew you were different from the rest. My throat tightened. Before he left, he stood slowly and rested a hand on the back of my chair. You're angry at Jake, he said, and you should be. But keep an eye on Marcus. He's got something the others don't. He's paying attention. Then he walked out as quietly as he arrived. I stared at the folder long after the door clicked shut. At 5:15 p.m. that same day, Kelly messaged me for the first time since the confrontation. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just, you happy now? You ruined this family. Grandpa won't live forever. When he's gone, you'll be alone. Enjoy the money. I stared at the screen for a full minute. She still didn't get it. They weren't angry, I said no. They were angry nothing happened when I did. I didn't fold. I didn't come crawling back. I didn't fear their disapproval. And for the first time, they realized they needed me, not the other way around. That chapter of my life, the one where I kept them afloat, was over. Now I was writing the next one myself, and they didn't get a pen. It's strange how silence can feel louder than screaming. After Grandpa's visit and the seismic shift he'd created, my family seemed to dissolve into the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the thick, bitter sort that settles when people are waiting for reality to bend back in their favor, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to return to normal, which to them meant self-sacrifice disguised as love. But I didn't return, and the longer I stayed firm, the more the silence said everything. No more emergency calls, no more guilt-laced texts, no more entitled expectations disguised as requests. They weren't reaching out because they respected my boundary. They were reaching out because they were scrambling to survive without me. But in the middle of that quiet came the one voice I wasn't prepared for. Marcus. He started calling more often, not with demands, not with manipulation, but with the simple, tentative curiosity of a teenager who had begun to understand something was deeply broken around him. We talked about school, basketball, the book he was forced to read for English class. It's not even bad, it's just unnecessarily dramatic, he'd said, with the sincerity only a teenager could pull off. Light conversations, easy ones, the kind I'd always wished we could have. But one evening, after a long pause, he asked, "Did you mean it when you said you're done helping them?" I swallowed, "Yes." Another pause. "Does that include me?" I didn't answer immediately, not because I questioned it, but because my voice tightened in a way I didn't expect. "Of course not," I said finally. "You're not them." He almost cried. I heard it in the catch of his breath. "Okay, good. I don't want to end up like Dad." That line had been haunting me for days. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't asking for a rescue. He was asking for a model, something to measure himself against that wasn't chaos or entitlement. But I still wasn't sure how to answer him. How do you explain to a 16-year-old boy that what saved you wasn't some moral superiority, but exhaustion? That you learned independence because no one ever caught you when you fell? That sometimes the only difference between becoming part of a cycle and breaking it is one hard decision no one sees coming? I told him I'd call him tomorrow with a real answer. Then I lay awake half the night. But while I was trying to figure out how to help Marcus without becoming another crutch, someone else was planning an ambush of their own. 3 days later, I was leaving work around 6:01 p.m., headphones in, mentally untangling a spreadsheet I needed to finish later when I saw her. Kelly, leaning against the parking structure wall, like a Netflix villain waiting for her dramatic reveal. Except this version of her didn't look powerful or polished or smug. She looked smaller, tired, shoulders hunched inward as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up space. Her hair was unstyled, her nails unpolished, her purse anonymous, not a designer logo in sight, and her eyes were wary, like she wasn't sure whether to run or apologize or attack. My first instinct was to keep walking, pretend I didn't see her, pretend she was the wind or a trick of light. But she stepped forward. "Sienna," she caught herself, corrected. "Naomi, please, I need 5 minutes." "No," I said immediately. "If you're here for money." She shook her head quickly. "Not for money, I swear. Just 5 minutes." That stopped me. Not because I trusted her, but because entitlement doesn't ask for 5 minutes. Entitlement demands. And for the first time in her life, Kelly wasn't demanding anything from me. So I gave her 5 minutes. Her voice wavered at first, as if she was learning how to talk without venom. "Ty left," she said. "Took my cards, ran up debt, blocked me." I didn't respond. She wasn't telling me anything I hadn't predicted a month ago. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted. "I've been sleeping on couches." Still, I said nothing. She looked down, twisting a folded paper in her hands. "I know I was awful to you. I know that. I lied. I stole. I acted like you owed me something because Mom did. Because everyone did." The folded paper in her hands trembled as she lifted it toward me. "This is what I came to show you." I took it carefully. It wasn't a bill, not a demand, not an apology composed by guilt. It was a certificate, community college, enrollment confirmation course, business fundamentals, night program. I stared at it. She swallowed. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't erase the mess I've made. But I needed you to know. I'm trying. I'm trying to be someone I wouldn't hate if I met her." She let out a shaky breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a second chance. I just wanted you to know I'm not proud of who I was. And I'm not asking you for help. Not today. Not ever again. Then she turned and walked away. No hug, no theatrics, no please reconsider. Just left, the certificate still warm in my hands. I didn't chase her. I didn't call after her. I just watched her walk away, her silhouette shrinking into the fading light until she disappeared around the corner. As I stood there, the realization settled in quietly. I hadn't stopped helping people. I had stopped helping people who refused to help themselves. Marcus, Grandpa, even Kelly maybe, in her own stumbling way. They weren't asking for me to rescue them. They were asking how to stand. And for the first time in my life, it felt like the right people were finally learning to carry their own weight.